So man, we got a heavy frost this morning, about 25 degrees Fahrenheit, I think, which is pretty cold for this area, and the coldest morning with that I can remember we've had all year. So I broke out the new overalls, which is nice. I'll share those with you here in a little bit, but we got to do some form work in front of the shop, break these things in a little bit. So let's get started doing that, then I've got some other things I'll share with you as well. So the first thing that I want to address this morning is the front of the shop here. Now I need some sort of barrier here to hold back all the concrete pressure that's going to be wanting to flow out in the driveway. Something that will stay good and flat. That way when we remove it, we got a nice flat front to the pad here, something that's not all bowed. We also got to set some grade pins out in the floor, just reference points for when you're pouring concrete in here for the final height, right? We'll use a laser to set those up, and that's it. Let's knock this out, then we'll move on to something else. Oh man, really? Just a hair short. Probably should have measured that first, but I thought that would be long enough. I'll find something else. So here is a piece of 3/4 ply. It's obviously too tall, but it is long enough. So we'll cut this up and use that. It's from the old formwork of the footing as well. And I've run thousands of these T25 Torx head screws in this project, and that's not an exaggeration. On temporary support wall, all the formwork for the footings, I mean, you name it, a bunch of them. And these, what are they, flex drive DeWalt bits are awesome. I got some on the table. I want to show you what I found. So I went through a good handful of these Torx bit drivers over this project, driver ends anyway, and I found that these flex torque bits work really well. I picked them up just to try them because I was getting aggravated with how many of these I was wearing out, right? Wearing the splines off the ends, they'd start camming out of the heads of the screws and causing me problems. So I picked these up and I'm really happy that I did. They're nice. I think that Milwaukee makes a very similar design. Now, they're not great for everything. For driving really long screws, they seem to drive a little softer than what these large shanked bits drive. But, you know, if you're driving a bunch of shorter screws, man, these things are nice. They seem to last a really long time, and they don't cam out the heads as bad as something like this would. Now, this is a GRK, right? I got a pack of these as well. And they're great, but they do seem to wear out faster than the DeWalt ones. This is one that I broke the end off of, but you know, that was after hundreds of screws, and you know, no loss, right? They are consumables, but you get the idea. Try these out if you're interested. I think they're worth a shot, and they work really well. So that should work. We'll just cut that off at about the right height, put a concrete anchor in the old pad, and then put some concrete stakes in front of this to reinforce it from bowing. But I'm going to wait on the stakes because I want to be able to close my doors in the meantime until we pour this. So I'm wearing a brand new pair of overalls today. This is the first time I ever wore them. These were, well, they weren't sent to me by Bern, but Bern sent me and Elizabeth a gift card probably 6 months ago that we used to buy some things off their website that we wanted. And I'm assuming Bern did that as a thanks for me mentioning their overalls some time ago, maybe a year or so ago, because I'd said that I really liked their overalls, right? I like my old pair, and I'd be wearing them today if they weren't wet. But I broke out this new pair and some of the gear that I had got from Bern, and I want to share that with you because there are some features on these that I really like, even better than my old pair, even though they are really nice as well. So we'll look at these both in detail here in a little bit, and I'll show you the difference really quick. But these are some nice overalls for sure, and I hope that they last as long and are as durable as my old pair because they've been awesome. So that should work just fine, as long as we put a few stakes in there, because otherwise it would bow out. But we'll wait till the doors, or till we're ready to pour, so we can still close the doors. There's going to be quite a discrepancy actually between the old pad and the new pad, but we'll address that in the future. My mind is set on pouring this good and level, and then worrying about that later. I plan on that probably being more of a lay down area anyway, maybe laying stuff on the floor and fabricating, not so much a heavy use, setting machines on or whatnot. You get the idea. So possibly an epoxy coat on that side, or maybe even just a skim coat of concrete, right? Like a grout mix or something, and then cut around the worst spots and where you don't have to feather it out to nothing. That's my thoughts anyway. We'll address that when the time comes. But I'm not an expert on concrete, that's for sure. So this is not a how-to. In fact, I'll show you the full extent of my concrete pouring knowledge right now. See, little guy? That's it. Don't look too bad, does it? So there's a lot of firsts in this project for me. I've never poured obviously a pad of this size. First time laying block, first time setting windows, first time digging a footer of this size. And it's all turned out pretty good so far. Depends on who you ask if it's overdone or underdone. There's a world of critics out there when it comes to trade work like this. In fact, there's a handful of people out there who think that, if you're not an expert in it, you shouldn't make a video showing yourself doing it, which I think is completely silly, because we'd have no videos basically otherwise from the majority of content creators out there. So you just do the best you can, try to end up with a product that you're happy with, and if it works out good, and if it doesn't, whatever, it's your own personal project, so you're the only person that pays for it. And tell your critics to go pound sand. So they don't mess around with these bridge foundations. Right down to the bedrock. Piece of rebar. And they have drains set up so when water doesn't gather in behind these big foundations, I guess, so it drains out ever so often. So let's take a second and go over these concrete anchors that I've been using around the shop. Compare these three to each other just quickly, right, based on the information that we have available on the packaging. Now, I've used these for several different applications because some of these are better suited in some situations than others, obviously. So let's take a second and talk about these. So first in line here, we have the Cobra drive nail anchors. Now I recently used these to hold the gutters to the side of the building here. Why? Because they're easy to install and they have a really nice finished look once you've driven them in. Now these, out of all three of the anchors that I have here, have the lowest pull strength, right? And this pull strength is based on packaging information and 4,000 psi concrete, right? So once you set this anchor in the wall, it has a pull strength of 220 pounds. That's what I'm assuming based on the information that we have here on the package. So that's pretty low, really, and probably best suited for what we used it for. You wouldn't want to pull equipment around on the floor of your shop with these, but you know, if you wanted to hang a sign out on the outside of your shop, or like I did, fasten your gutters to the wall, you know, it's pretty simple and cheap anchor to use. I like them, but you know, just for light duty stuff. So number 2 on the list here is the wedge type anchor, and the one out of all these that I would prefer to sit on the shelf here in the shop for just general use. Now, I've used these over the years for, I mean, you name it, multiple things. Pulling equipment off trailers, not the 1/4 inch, but the 1/2 and the 3/8 version of this. Fastening down equipment, you know, used them at work, on and on and on, right? Just a piece of threaded rod, basically, that's sticking out of the concrete that you can fasten anything you can imagine to. And you can loosen or tighten it as many times as you want without degrading its pull strength. Now this 1/4 inch anchor has a pull strength of 1,780 pounds, which is pretty substantial, actually, for a 1/4 inch anchor. So surprisingly strong and pretty versatile, really. One of my favorite, just general use anchors. So last in line here we have the Tapcons, and these are the newest to me. Now I've used these types way, you know, for years, off and on, but these, probably introduced to them a year or so ago at my day job. We were holding a piece of sampling equipment up to a block wall, and I was so skeptical of these the first time that I seen them, thinking for sure that there's no way that that thread would hold up being screwed into concrete. But they do, and out of these 3/4 inch anchors, these have the strongest pull strength, which is surprising. 2,380 psi if you fully engage this 1/4 inch anchor into 4,000 psi concrete, you know, to pull it free. That's impressive. These are also approved for treated lumber, like if you wanted to hold a treated board down to your concrete pad for a sill plate or whatnot. You know, the uses are endless. The good thing about these is that once you're done, right, you can remove it. You're left with a hole that's, you know, pretty much clean. These, you'll always have an anchor stuck in the hole unless you drill it out, but you know, you get the idea. I'm not for sure how they would perform after being installed and removed multiple times. You probably would degrade its hold strength, but you know, nice. Really like those Tapcon anchors. So check out this little piece of equipment. It's new to me, brought by my buddy Al, who picked it up at an auction here recently and figured I could use it around here. I think this is really neat. I'm excited to have it, even though it is a really simple piece of equipment. It is a Strippit, at least that's what it says on the casting here, punch and die grinder. Now this thing does one thing, and it grinds pins, punches, or dies, or whatever probably you could fit in this chuck. Faces them to length, cleans them up, right? 1/4 horsepower, single phase motor that runs a small cup wheel down here that you can change its height in relationship to the chuck anyway by this dial that is in thousandths division. It operates really smooth. It has been used, but I don't think this thing's been overused. So let's clean it up, get a look at it. We'll have to rewire it because that's not going to work. And we'll test it out. You know, I've never used one of these things before, so kind of excited actually. All right, so just for reference on the tag here, part number 85010-000, Strippit Howdally, Strippit Division, Howdally Industries Inc., Akron, New York, USA. So I'm pretty intrigued by this thing. It's definitely an industrial piece, right? Something you'd probably see in the tool room. It seems like it's really, really well built, right? So let's clean this thing up, get all this grinding dust off of it. Maybe take this chuck apart, clean it up a bit, get all the goo out of it, right? Dress the wheel and grind something with it. I don't even think this thing will actually need painted. Just a good cleaning, right? So I really enjoy doing stuff like this. And right now I'm waiting on contractors for the floor, so something fun to do for a change. So this shaft here runs in and out of the casting. There is a rubber lip seal that runs around the shaft there to keep all the grinding grit and stuff out of there. Not all eat up, right? That's a good sign. So there's a look at the cup wheel. A little bit of buildup on the inside. Bearings feel good in the motor. So I'm not going to go completely crazy on the cleanup here. Just knock, the worst of it off, all the buildup, strike the neglect off of it. Let's pull off this 3-jaw chuck. I want to clean it up, right? That's a pretty important piece of this equipment. So 3 looks like maybe 3/16. Yes. So that chuck is labeled Strippit. Little nice, made in America, 3-jaw. Kind of dirty, but a little quarter-inch chuck key, right? So just in case you've never taken apart a scroll 3-jaw chuck before, each jaw is numbered, or else when you screw them in, they won't center inside the body of the chuck. So on the body, labeled number 1, and on the back of the jaw, this one's labeled number 3. Do they have them in wrong? Or is it 1, 2, 3? That's kind of crazy. Yeah, there's 3, and that's jaw number 2. They got these in wrong. No matter what piece of equipment you work on, there'll always be somebody who's felt the need to pound on it with a hammer of some sort. So the grind on these vice jaws looks really good. Probably really decent quality chuck at one time. Doesn't seem to be, any real excess wear on this, even though it is a chuck used in a grinder. And I don't guess it actually matters, if this chuck is all that great or not. Just for work holding. Needs to hold the work securely, and that's pretty much it, I think. It doesn't rotate on the piece of equipment or anything. So somebody's definitely been in here before me. Which, never surprising, really. A piece of equipment of this age. Get a better screwdriver. Wow. these impacts and make it easy. And that thing was definitely tight. Needs a good cleaning. So when it comes to cleaning up a chuck, I know there's a lot of people out there that are maybe intimidated by it, but literally there's like 5 parts to a scroll chuck, not counting the jaws. You got the back plate, which I'm cleaning here, the body of the chuck, you got the pinion, and then you got the scroll. And that's it. 2+ hours, about what it took from start to finish to get this thing cleaned up. And going back together, was easier actually than taking it apart. Little grease, just a smear really on the scroll and the pinion, and then some light, what was it, Factor 2, I think, just to keep this chuck from being all sticky, right? We used the majority of just light machine oil. So this little chuck cleaned up pretty nice. Now it's time to install the jaws. We have on the body position 1, 2, and 3. They were installed wrong originally, but jaws 1, 2, and 3, and they go in their corresponding slots. So take jaw 1. I remember being shown this years ago, struggling with a chuck, and I never forgot it. So watching the scroll, looking for the beginning of the first thread to pass that slot. So back it up a bit, take jaw 1 and install it, and give it a little push and a turn, make sure it took. Then look in to slot 2, look for the beginning of the thread to come around, and there it is. So take jaw 2, it in, and then same on jaw 3. Here's the beginning, so back up, in, turn, and took. Now when we run these in, they should mate up perfectly in the center. And there we go. Really, really nice mate up there. So timed correctly. So unfortunately, I do not have any of these lying around, these slip-on connectors, in order to replace this cord. So we're just going to have to wait on that. It doesn't look too bad. I think for a test run, right, this will work. So we're just going to leave it as is. So plugged in, not crazy about the cord, right? I'd like to replace that, but this should be good enough for a test run. Never heard this thing run, don't know if it'll start. Here we go. And it does, and sounds good, actually. About like it should, I think. Let's dress the wheel on it and see if we can't grind the end of a pin. So I'm just going to take a cluster diamond here and chuck it up in the chuck. Make sure I have plenty of clearance. Bring the head down to where it's really close. Turn the machine on and then back and forth, lowering the feed just slightly until I dress the face of this wheel. I think that's probably good enough. Now we can put a pin in there and see how it grinds. So here's an old 3-flute brazed on carbide end mill, actually. Just a piece of high-speed steel, right? We'll just dress the back head. About the same difference, I think. Put it in there. Looking pretty good. So I think that looks pretty good, actually. About what I would expect. Just grind the ends of pins or punches flat. Right? Ruin one of your pin punches, put it in here, dress the end. So this thing done a pretty good job on the end of that pin. You know, I'm impressed, really. Just for as simple as this piece of equipment is, obviously there is a need to grind the ends of pins in a production type environment, probably something in a tool room, I'm assuming. Now, how perpendicular the top is to the sides, you know, I don't know. That's probably dependent, obviously, on the way that this chuck is mounted to the frame here. Now, I'm assuming that this is just an end stop, right? This is adjustable. It's not set right now, but you put your pin in from the bottom, bring it up till you touch the stop, and then you know that you need to downfeed, you know, 5, 10, 20 thousandths in order to start touching off, probably to keep you from having to, you know, spend so much time feeding down trying to touch off when you know, based on this, how far off the stone you are. That's my assumption, right? I haven't used one of these, but small footprint on this machine. I think that there are instances where it would come in really handy. It does, one thing, and that's grind the ends of pins and punches. So neat. I think that cleaned up really good, mounted on a good solid table. It could come in handy. So chances are, if you've watched the channel at all, at least for the last few years anyway, you've noticed me break out this old pair of overalls every time the weather cools off around here. And every year I get the same questions. Who makes them? Where'd you get them? How much are they? What's your experience with them? On and on and on. So let's touch on that really quick, because I do like these overalls. And in fact, I've endorsed them before on the channel simply because I've had such a good experience with them. Now, these are made by Bern. I bought these like anybody else would. Actually got them from a local chain store here in town that sells farm supplies. Mechanical odds and ends, right? Farm related, animal feed, so on and so on. And I think at the time I bought these, they were like 55 or 60 bucks. And I recently looked on their website, and I think they're around that same price right now, which is a bit surprising. Now, you can still get this exact same cut, so if you're interested in this model right here, you can still get them. Now, these are insulated, and the model number on these is B213BB, and I wear medium. I'm relatively short and not that big, so and these fit me really well. That's one reason why I like them. Now, I've had no bad experiences with these. I haven't tore them, nothing. The insulation on the inside's still good, right? I haven't ripped anything. The only damage to these overalls is right on the ends of the legs, where they obviously are going to rub the ground because they're a little long, and where the legs rub together, we got a little bit of abrasion right there. Now, these are dirty, right? They're basically, in my opinion, this is a tool, right? Made to keep you clean, keep you warm when you're working, and that's it. They're not necessarily for fashion, but you get the idea. So we got a new pair here that is a different model. They're insulated, and from the waist down, they're almost exactly the same. But from the waist up, there are a few differences that actually I like about the new pair. Now, let me give you the model number of these, and these came from Bern's website, B-E-R-N-E. And the model on these is B3770D. And the major differences in between these two, they really feel the same, like they're made of the same material. But the major differences is this has a central zipper, where this is a solid front. This has 4 pockets up on the chest, and this one has 2. What I've found, I've wore these a few times now, is that it's a lot easier to access anything that you have on under them in this pair a lot easier than it is in this pair. Now, these actually have a snap button on the side where you can get into your jean pockets a lot easier than what you can with these. These have hook and loop buttons on the side, which with gloves on makes it pretty tough, right, to get into your pockets. So, I'm interested to break those things in, because I actually like the cut of them. Not that I don't like my old pair, because I do, and I'm going to be wearing them both. But if you're interested, this pair I think runs about $100 bucks, so a little more expensive than this pair. But that is what it is. So there you go, a little overview of the overalls. So we got our grade pins in. That's just 1/2-inch rebar driven in the ground and then cut off at the final height. You can see these are painted orange. And those are just references, right? When they pour the concrete in here, they'll stop once they get to the top of the pin, and they'll know that they got the proper depth here. And then those will be pulled once this concrete, is in, right? All the formwork is done, and this floor is pretty much ready to be poured. Now, I've been back and forth with contractors for the last couple of weeks, getting quotes, talking to people, trying to fill it out and see what it's going to cost. And it is in your best interest to get as many quotes as you can, because the price on a job like this can easily range a couple $1,000, which is substantial. And you get to talk to the people who are potentially going to do the job, and you can choose, find the best person at the best price. And that's what we're still doing, still working that out. But hopefully this week I can get concrete in here. That's the plan anyway. So I know a couple people noticed that I did not post a video last week, which is unlike me, but it does happen on occasion. And just working overtime, right? Trying to keep the lights on here, finish up projects at work that, need to be done before the holidays, and on and on and on. Regular stuff that everybody has to deal with, I guess. So that's it. You know, nothing happened. Just the normal life happened, I guess. So huge thanks to anybody who supported me on this project. It's much appreciated, as you can imagine. Thanks to my viewers, patrons, and subscribers. And that's it. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.
The birds fly south as the light leaves your eyes. Hold on to your dream. Oh, I know you wanna scream. Since the day you're born, you're just a flower on your own, waiting for the sun to blossom, hoping to break through.